very much. Can everyone see that screen?
Yep, you're good.
That works. Excellent. Thanks very much. I'm just going to move your faces out of the way. Just a second. There we go. Yeah, so very grateful to be invited to this and excited to present a little bit around WASH and AI, which are my two favorite things for the past years now. And so feel free to interrupt. There aren't that too many people for if you have any questions, and if I miss it, then I'll rely on the hosts to just flag me to stop. And if I talk too fast or if I explain something that's way too complicated, just let me know and I'll try and simplify it. Or just, put it in GPT and ask GPT to simplify it for you. So what I'll cover today is starting with a little bit speaking to the challenges that I've seen working in the WASH sector around sort of knowledge dissemination, troubleshooting and learning, and also then see what the opportunities in the latest advancement in AI can do to help with some of that. I'll briefly present WASH AI, which is a service that I built in the past year and a half, and then speak a little bit about the future. So some of the challenges, and I've worked, my history is basically really both tech and WASH, about 15 years in both sectors, and always try to look at how we can leverage technology for social impact, in particular WASH. So that's kind of my background. Worked at CAWST in Canada for over a decade, which focuses on capacity building in the sector, which is kind of why I'm focusing on that as well. So the things I've seen in the sector is so much effort, for example, put into making pretty PDFs or websites and not really think about how do we get that information out there. I've seen a lot of initiatives, build yet another online library, another pretty website, and not necessarily thinking about how is the information reaching those who need it. And then TLDR, for those who don't know, means too long didn't read, a lot of long documents that aren't necessarily useful and no one ends up reading it, or we don't really know who reads it. The other thing that comes up when we think of how to get from information to knowledge has been the relevancy, or how does this apply to my context? So you'll read a case study, you'll look at an example, and a lot of practitioners are thinking, great, but what does this mean to me? Another barrier has been language. So, having something in French, English, Spanish, but can I have that in Arabic? Can I have that in Urdu? Would make such a difference from going from information to knowledge. Finally, and I think the biggest challenge we have is it seems like dissemination stops at putting something out there, not necessarily measuring who's using it, who's using this manual that you spent thousands of hours writing. How useful was it? And then also, how do you get the feedback on saying, great, when I try to use your manual, this was my experience. So those are some of the challenges that I've seen in the sector, and so trying to think how to solve it. The other thing, being part of quite a number of surveys out there and talking to many organizations, how do WASH practitioners access information? Surprisingly, they still Google. There's so much Googling happening. I mean, you and I all do it. The next step sometimes is to WhatsApp a friend or a colleague, ask them a question, because sometimes there's a lot of shame around asking a technical question because they think they should know it. The other one is if they have a technical a reference person in their organization, they might ask them. Those who have more experience usually have a stash of PDF manuals and documents, in their drive somewhere, and we'll look at that. And since 23, there's a lot of GPTing happening, and here I'm referring to ChatGPT, asking a question and hoping that AI will give them the right answer. So when AI came out, well, AI has been around for a while, but one of the questions that I've been asking myself for years now is, how do we get the relevant information in the hands of the right people now, like they want answers now, and in a way that they can both understand and also interact with? So those are the big challenges. For it to be relevant, it needs to be contextualized, up to date, and also fit for purpose. The difference between a technical manual and a meta-analysis paper. Understanding who is the target audience for a piece of document, for a document. So understanding what is their role in the sector. Are they policy writers? Are they field workers? Are they technicians? Now, as in, like, I want the information now. I don't have time to synthesize it. A lot of people won't watch this recording, maybe at 2 speed, and so how do we get that right away to the people? Finally, understand. So from information to become knowledge, it needs to be understood. So language is huge. Having it in their own language is really important. Having it in a more simple way. So not only in the way that the words are used, but also in the complexity of the topic itself. And then understanding also requires background knowledge. So you might have some piece of information, but how do you get some of the background knowledge to be able to make that information relevant to you? And then the interaction part is the ability to be, okay, great, I've read your thing, or I've watched your video, but now I want to dig deeper. Like, help me understand better. Let's dig into this topic. Could you summarize it? Could you expand on in this area? Could we refine some area of what is being shared? And this could be a manual, a technical aspect of something. It could be a policy. It could be a whole bunch of information. So that's how I've been looking at things. And really, this is where the advancements in AI can make a difference in supporting this shift and supporting that challenge. So AI has been around for a while. It's not, GPT didn't just drop from the sky. It really, since the 50s, neural networks was introduced. We saw a big shift in the 2010s when we re-engaged with neural networks and had this. I won't get into the technical details, but essentially deep learning is the term coined, and it refers to the idea that there is multiple layers of neural networks, and it helps with understanding of language. 2017 was a huge shift with a paper called Attention is All You Need. And that's when transformer models, so these are AI models that were developed, the transformer models, which is still the basis of all those big models out there like ChatGPT. And that's really in 2017 when we saw this pivot in the AI sector. Obviously, everyone knows ChatGPT that came out in 2022 as one of the most public-facing AI models and started popularizing large language models. Some of you might know Claude, which is another large model out there. The biggest shift with them was that they made it so that you can work with large amounts of content. And every single day there are new models coming out, and advancements are happening. Really, we're leapfrogging pretty much every week with these technologies. I spend at least 2 hours a day catching up, and I even use AI to help summarize the stuff that's coming out because there's just too much to read. So it's not new, and it's advancing very, very fast. What I like to explain around large language models is that there's basically two capabilities, two skills. One is it has internal knowledge, right? Like, who was the president of France in 1950? The model can answer that probably. The second thing is its ability to work with language, so English language or whatever. That's where it gets really interesting. So its ability to summarize, its ability to extract or simplify. I wouldn't rely on internal knowledge. This is where, if you're talking directly with a model, it's only limited by what it's being trained on, the data that has been trained on. These large models are trained on, terabytes of data, but there are limitations to this knowledge, and you can't just simply keep training and keep updating a model. There's the concept of drift that occurs. So even GPT, for example, is limited to a certain date and time. It used to be 2021 September. Now it's April 2022. And I think they've done some tweaks to inject more knowledge. But I would never rely on the internal knowledge of a model, especially if you're looking at latest information. But on the other hand, its ability to work with language should be leveraged. So the transformation we're seeing in all sectors, including the WASH sector, is all of these abilities. And I'm sure you've all played with, and if you haven't, I highly recommend it. Asking them something to, like, for example, summarize a meeting that you missed, and to extract, so you don't have to watch the whole meeting video. Its ability to simplify concepts. I use that a lot when I was learning about new things, or extraction of key takeaways. And then furthermore, even extracting key takeaways, but only the ones that are relevant to a subsector or a subtopic. Like if you've got this big report or something, you can say, extract the key takeaways just relevant to this application. So this is the idea of using its abilities to work with the language. And this is a huge time saver. I've already saved thousands of hours in the last year, and I'm sure you all have too, by leveraging its capabilities with using language. So digging a little deeper in capabilities, we can use AI to do these tasks. So, and really the complexity increases as you go down in these types of tasks. So asking AI to, you dump a report and you can say, what was their total revenue for, 2023, and it's on page 76 of a 200-page report, it'll find it. So fact and data retrieval, brilliant. It can do that, probably one of the simplest things that AI can do. And as you go down saying, okay, could you now compare these documents? Could you summarize these documents? Could you look at this facts and then put it in context of this knowledge domain? And then more complex right at the end is the idea of reasoning over multiple documents, multiple learnings in a sector, synthesized knowledge about something, having this base background knowledge, and then giving you recommendations. And that's the most complex. That's getting to fit in the area of what we call AGI, general intelligence, which we are not fully there yet, and it's much, much more complex to do that. So in building Wash AI, I'm looking at this evolution of complexity, and then getting as far to the bottom as I can to be able to make it useful. So what we're seeing already, and I think we're going to be seeing more and more about it in the sector and in many sectors, is this evolution in how content is consumed. We're going to see more and more people go from accessing static content, and I don't know if static and dynamic are the right words, but essentially, going to reading those raw reports or reading those research papers from scratch, going onto libraries, searching through a library, and they're going to shift to interfacing with AI in particular, to which then does the interaction with all of those content pieces. So we're going to see more people relying on summarizations, machine translations, contextualized information, collated information, extracted information. And this is great because it's a great time saver, but it does also come with risks, because you're now relying on the capabilities of these interfaces and these AI applications to tell you the truth about what it found in these documents. And so some of the risks we're seeing in this shift of content consumption are things like bias, hallucinations. If you're not familiar with the term hallucination, it's the term that we use for AI when we ask it a question. It doesn't actually know the answer, but it's really good at writing things. So it looks convincing, but it's wrong. There's actually a case, I don't know if it was in Canada or in the US, where someone used AI in legal proceedings, and they referred to a case that didn't even exist because they asked GPT. And it said, Jones versus Jones 2010 or something, and that wasn't a case. It just used legal lingo to give an answer. So that's hallucination. It can also have a risk of incompleteness. It might sound complete and know what it's talking about, but it's missing out on content, or it can be incorrect. So the issues we're seeing is people are trusting a tool without understanding how it's working. They're using a tool for the wrong purpose, or they're not sure how to properly prompt, when you ask a question that's referred to as prompting, and in terms of how they interact with AI. So those three things at the bottom there are, I believe, the key areas we need to focus on in terms of digital literacy within the sector, and beyond, to ensure that we're using the right tools for the right purpose. There are many tools out there. Some of my favorite ones are the Claude model, which is similar to ChatGPT. I'm not sure if it's ready in Canada yet, but it will be shortly. If not, if you have a VPN for the US, just use that. The Perplexity is another great tool, which basically does internet search for you, does the search, finds the information, summarizes it for you, and then gives you an answer and uses references. So when it says a fact that it's actually referring to it found that information on this website. Consensus is the research space. And so what they've done is basically they have millions of scientific articles, and you can ask a question and it will do the research within the database. It will find the papers that are most relevant to you and refer back to them, extract key takeaways that are relevant to your research question, and allow you to export citations and look into it. So again, very transparent on where the information and the recommendation summaries are coming from. And those are great tools that are out there to leverage AI in a more transparent way than just simply chatting with GPT and hoping for the best. They're all free. They do have a paid version, but even the free version is really good. Another evolution we're seeing is translation. So by translation, I'm referring to machine translation. The two big models out there is Meta's No Language Left Behind model, which the challenge with language models for low resource languages, which refers to the languages where the internet doesn't have many words about it. So a lot of indigenous languages, for example, in Canada, are just simply not available. So we're looking at taking recordings and transcribing them and being able to use that for both translation and AI use directly. AI just got launched a few weeks ago, I think, by Cohere, where they've got over 100 languages, and they've combined a very, very interesting data set to allow for directly interfacing in a multilingual AI, as well as using it for translation. So we're seeing huge advancements in live translation and machine translation, where we can leverage it to suddenly make information accessible. And, in the case of WASH AI, and I'll speak to that in a little bit, but suddenly, even though you might have, for example, the latest guidelines by the WHO only available now in English, I think the Spanish is coming out soon, by having AI interface with that English information base and being able to answer it in many other languages right away, you've suddenly made information much more accessible immediately. And combining with different channels, you can also make information available right away. So going back to that question that I mentioned, that was the rationale for building WASH AI. And it's been a really interesting journey because AI goes so fast, and there's evolution in technology where basically rewriting WASH AI every 2 months because we're leveraging new models, new technologies, and new practices. What is WASH AI? So the intention of it is not the product that you see, sort of the chatbot online. The intention of it is really looking at how we can leverage AI services and products to support WASH information, helping for more informed decision-making for WASH practitioners, essentially pushing information out there. There is great information. The WASH sector is prolific in what it produces in content. And so how can we just simply make that even more available to people? It comes with the web chat, which is the visual component of it. We're just about to launch WhatsApp, so anyone who has WhatsApp can speak straight to the model and the framework. Looking for testers. If you want to test it, go to our website and sign up. I'm looking for people to break it, essentially. Then there's a learn interface as well, which is a bit more conversational to help people interact with topics in a more fluid and conversational way. The TLDR service is the idea that AI is very good at summarizing and extracting key information. So when information comes out in the sector, being able to just produce very, very short snippets and bullets on things that they might have not realized are there, and then they can go read the more detailed. Pulse is not yet launched. It is the idea of it's more around news and updates, because WASH AI is aggregating a lot of content in the WASH sector, and the idea of Pulse is to just really give short snippets of what's happening in the sector, organizational updates, project updates, funding updates. And again, AI is very, very good at simplifying, summarizing, and extracting. So we'll be using that to do that. And then exploring now, actually with CAWST, the organization, we're exploring how to do translation and really leveraging those machine translation models so people can have a document and basically translate it, even though it hasn't been translated, using machine translation to get that first draft out. So suddenly that information is available to them. So I want to dig in a little bit on how WASH AI works, because I think transparency in AI is one of the biggest challenges and one of the most important things. Bear with me with this diagram. So the key part of, like I was saying earlier, is having a good knowledge base that AI can interact with to give you information, because we don't want to rely on the model's knowledge necessarily. So this is one of the most challenging parts of WASH AI, is building up this knowledge base. So we're essentially looking at the sector in terms of everything that's indexed by Google and open for everyone to read and see. And then we're basically chunking that in a way that the AI model can interact with this. So it's not just about having PDFs in a folder that the AI can talk to. We actually have to change this information so that it's accessible for retrieval. The part that we're more familiar with is the idea that you will ask a question. So on the left here, a user will ask a question similar to how you would write to GPT. And there's different layers that happen before we get to the answer at the bottom. So it would start with, and the translation module is not live yet, but essentially it would first translate it to English because a lot of our base knowledge is in English. Then it will try and understand, what is the person asking? Is it about like research? Is it a list of something? So this intention classifier helps us understand better what kind of question they have. We'll also decompose the query because sometimes they might ask, can you compare ceramic filters to biosand filters? So what we really want to be doing is like, well, let's grab a whole bunch of stuff from ceramics, let's grab a whole bunch of stuff from biosand, and then let's produce an answer for you. If you don't decompose the query, you'll only find the documents that actually do a comparison. And so that might be limited. So we've got these two things happening in parallel. Then it goes to the retrieval layer, and the retrieval layer will go and fetch that base information from the knowledge base that was curated. It will pass it then to the generative layer, which is essentially the model, the AI, and then it will translate it back to the original language of the person writing and then feed that to the user. We also have this idea of suggested exploration, which is helping the user explore more. So based on the question and the answer, we'll actually produce a few questions that like, hey, maybe you want to know more about how ceramic filters work. And it will then provide some of those questions so they can dig in further. This is a simplified view of what actually happens. The last module is, I find, the most exciting. We are not there yet, but it's the idea that because users are interacting with information, we have a huge opportunity for them to agree or disagree or say like, actually, in my experience, this didn't happen. Or actually, that is not a good reference that you're providing. Sorry, just to go back to this, we also include all of the references to where the information is being shared. So because we're retrieving that from a database, we have the full original source of where that chunk of information came from. So we'll reference it back. But in terms of the feedback, the idea here is for the user to interact with information that is shared with them. And we can even do a credibility check, and they can say, well, no, ceramic filters don't work. I'm like, yeah, well, give me some more context. And sort of analyze the feedback of a user and then use that information to inject back into our base of knowledge. And so in some ways, and this is kind of a little bit where democratizing knowledge is, or really leveraging the concept of more tacit knowledge, that we can, and it is a dangerous thing. Like, you don't want to just absorb anything that everyone says, because they will have their own biases and their own limited experiences. But I am exploring on how we can leverage that user experience and knowledge and bring it into the overall knowledge base and have that available. And someone might share a simple experience. We can flag it as an experience. There's not a research paper. It's just someone's experience in rural Uganda. Let's capture it. So this is the last module of Wash AI, still in development and the most complex. So I'm looking at time, 23 minutes. I can show you a little bit what we've done. So we have launched Wash AI in beta. We've had over 350 signups from 54 countries and 28 languages. I've limited the invites. It's surprising how many people think it will solve the world, and then they ask the most crazy questions. We have 70 active beta testers, and so far around 600 queries. So I've analyzed the interest. This is the breakdown of the types of users. So a really nice mix of different types of users, everything from executives to in-country WASH coordinators and consultants, a few funders as well. The origin of the questions. So I looked at about 400 queries. The origin of the questions and where the people came from. So this is the region that they come from, and each question is tagged with a region. So a lot from Southeast Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, primarily. We have a few prolific users that use this every day, like 5 times a day. So they kind of bias a little bit these results, but we have a lot from the target countries. The categories of questions, and this was, again, I used AI to analyze this data, but we're looking at what types of questions, and a lot of people are interested in research, like, oh, is there research on this? Or can you give examples on this? So I found that quite interesting as well. But everything as well, a lot of design questions, even though it's super clear in the invite email saying like, this can't design your rainwater harvesting tank size for you yet. But there still are people trying to use it to design programs and projects. So that's the breakdown of the category. The topics are all over the place, which is great. a lot on water quality, a lot on water quality questions, some on governance and community and education. So, and that's really aligned as well with some of the examples of like how to do community engagement with WASH, community management and things like that. Some on technology and innovation as well. So that's the breakdown of the topics. And this is just from the beta users, right? So this is only from about 500 queries. So I wanted to jump in and just show you a little bit more how things work. And you're also welcome to sign up to WASH AI. I'm happy to fast track some of you if you want. If you say that you want to test it, you'll get your invite quicker. And I wanted to show briefly some of how it works. So here, I mean, I can re-ask this question, but essentially you ask the question like how to choose sanitation technology. So the example of how it would produce an answer was it will provide references. It will give you now this is a very general question, right? So the answer will stay within a general answer, and then it will provide references to, happy to see that the compendium's in there, and this is part of a check and see like what is it grabbing and how is it doing that. And then this explore. The explore idea is that we're generating questions that people can click on and dig further. So, what are the examples of some specific sanitation that can be considered in sanitation solutions? So there are ways for the user to continue exploring and then also to give feedback. And so they can be like, actually, you forgot, the answer is wrong. There's duplicates, too verbose. And so we're using this feedback form and they can say more about it to help fine tune our system. So just to give you just an example in the background what's happening, and don't worry about all the stuff you're going to see on the screen here, but just to show you, this is the logs of that query in particular. When they ask how to choose sanitation technology, that module in the beginning, this query breakdown, what we're actually doing with that is we're actually generating these 3 questions. So factors to consider, comparison, best practices of evaluating, and it's actually using these queries in addition to this one to expand its search so that we're actually retrieving as much information we can relevant to this original question. And so that's just an example of what's happening in the background, how we break down a user's question into different types of question and leverage it for an answer. And it's important that we get enough and the right information to be able to produce an answer that's relevant to the user. And I want to demo this by talking straight to, for example, let me take the example. So this is Anthropic Claude. It's the same as GPT. I'm interacting with it programmatically. But just to give you an example of, you can influence a model. Think any language model, even this one, which is just got released, huge. You can bias it in the sense that you got to think of them as being really sensitive and very opinionated, but also very sensitive to bias. So you can say ceramic filter, and I apologize for picking on ceramic filters. Ceramic filters in rural areas really do not work. So you are a helpful assistant. And then, so this is called the system prompt, which is the thing that accompanies any question from a user. And the user might ask, can we use ceramic filters in rural Uganda? Sorry, picking on Uganda again. Explain. I'll keep it short so that it doesn't go too crazy on me. So interesting is that ceramic might not be the best option. They can be fragile. So it's really focusing on all the things that make ceramic filters more sensitive. Ceramic filters in rural areas really work great. They are the best. So this contextual information that gets injected, because let's say there's a paper that said ceramic filters in rural areas work really great, they're the best, is going to be injected with the person's prompt. So this very, very fancy model that cost millions of dollars to build by Anthropic, similar to GPT-4, you can inject information and suddenly the model, and I'm going to rerun this again. Yes, ceramic filters are great. Simple, low cost, all the best qualities. So we're seeing that we're able to influence significantly a language model simply by injecting contextual information. And this speaks to the importance of what information is getting injected and the curation of your knowledge base. And again, this has got nothing to do with the competence of the model. This has got to do with the idea that it will use what you give it. So the system prompting and system fine-tuning is really what we're working on at Wash AI, as well as the curation of the knowledge base to ensure that we're providing the best information possible so that it can answer. And it's also why you should always turn on your analytical brain when you ask AI any question and think twice and look at the references. And here, the problem here, for example, is it does not have references. Whereas what we try to do is that if it says something, all of these references are there and you can go and read the source and see where this might be a summary statement and where that came from. That's what I got for now. I'm opening up to questions, and I can dig more in any areas of what I've shared. The one thing I will actually speak to very briefly is kind of the future. We're seeing a ton of chatbots. We're seeing a ton of information knowledge bots being put out there. What we will be seeing more of, and I'm not just speaking to Wash AI, but we will be seeing a lot more combination of what we call multimodal language models. So the idea of combining images and data. And by data, I'm referring to sort of, geodata, GeoAI, as well as tabular data. So the combination of that information will make things quite exciting, I think, in terms of leveraging information. We're going to see more and more multi-channel, which is important too. People are using tools like let's support them in the tools that they already use. The big shift is what we call agentic AI, which is agents. Think of it as an AI bot that doesn't just do like let's find information, send it to the model, give you an answer. It'll be like, looks like you're doing a research question. I'm going to start running now and go on to do a whole bunch of tasks, bring stuff together, collate it, do more. And think of an agent as a model or a system that has multiple capabilities that it will combine together and then come back to you with a report or come back to you with an answer. And so we are building that within Wash AI. It'll take a bit of time, but that's a big shift as well. And then autonomous agents are the big scary thing, I think, that a lot of the sector is talking about, which is agents that have enough general capabilities that they will do things at their own without being prompted. So the ability for them to stick around the internet and see what's going on and collate information and take various actions to do things. Not planning that for Wash AI, but it is something that we're going to be seeing very soon. Yes, thank you.